Hi, I'm Gab Marcotti. Welcome back to another one in our Keep or Dump series. I'm joined by Mark Ogden. For those who haven't or are unfamiliar with these, what we do is, Mark, we play sporting director, director of football. Call it what you like on behalf of clubs. Go check out our other ones. We've done them for Manchester United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City, Barcelona, and so on. But we're going to do Chelsea this week. And Mark, this is going to be an entirely different proposition.
Yeah, I think the reason we've left Chelsea to the end is because it was the most problematic, let's be honest. It was the one that we were dreading doing because as sporting directors, there's an awful lot of players at Chelsea which you have to decide whether they should stay, go, disappear on loan for a year or two. I mean, they've got 8 goalkeepers in the squad, and we don't think many of those are going to play. So this has been a challenging keep or dump, we have to say.
One of the other points I think to make here is that make this difficult is Chelsea have embarked on a specific strategy, and going back to January 2023, if you recall, that was the January in which the winter market where they signed a whole bunch of players from Malo Gusto on down, and that's when they really went for very long contracts, relatively low wages. There is a very specific strategy behind it, which is basically you get the best young players. Maybe you spend a ton of money on these very young players, but you're not paying them a lot in wages. They're okay with it because they're getting very long contracts. So in the long run, they're going to be due essentially the same thing. You're covered to some degree on the downside because they have low wages, so that you can then you can then shift them to other clubs, which has been a big part of the way Chelsea have operated if they don't work out. And obviously, if they work out and they turn into the superstars and fulfill their potential, you're psyched. But it means that you can't abandon the strategy at the midpoint. You have to kind of follow through with it. Let's dive into the goalkeepers. You mentioned the 8 goalkeepers. We think there's a strong possibility that they may get. They're looking well. We know that they're looking for a top goalkeeper. They're open to it if they find the right guy. The question is, who do you keep as your number 2 if you get your top keeper? We disagree a little bit on who that might be. I think if you do get your top keeper, you have to move Robert Sanchez on at this stage. And if not, I personally, if you do not get your top keeper, I would bring Georgi Petrovic back and have him compete with Robert Sanchez for the top spot. And I would look to loan maybe Philip Jorgensen out. It's like a game of Tetris here, Mark, with the goalkeepers and who you like. But I think it's fair to say, out of the three of them, Petrovic has had the best season.
Yeah. And there's an intriguing prospect as well with Mike Penders, who's had a season at Genk in Belgium, who probably quite lazily, but understandably, has been built the new Thibaut Courtois. He's tall, he's Belgian, and he's a goalkeeper. So, maybe he could come back and be part of the setup. He's had a good season. But I imagine the best bet there will be to loan him back out. But he's one to keep an eye on because he's very tall and very, very promising.
Speaking of very tall, in case you're related to him and you care about this, Lucas Bergstrom is out of contract, so he's gone. And Gabriel Slonina, who we haven't mentioned, he was on loan at Barnsley last year. He got injured. He came back. Again, you send him somewhere where he can play. Moving on to the defenders, Levi Colwell, deal through 2029 plus an option. That's very easy. That's a straight keep. We don't need to discuss that. Where we disagree, Trevoh Chalobah, 25 years old, 2028. He spent the first half of last season at Crystal Palace on loan. If you remember, prior to that, they were looking to move him. There was some talk of Bayern, whatever. Then they had to bring him back mid-season, and I thought he did pretty well. I think he's a keep. You want to get rid of him?
Well, I don't want to get rid of him. I think the way Chelsea operate, he's a homegrown player. They like to use that model of offloading homegrown players because of the pure profit scenario. This time last year, he didn't really have a place at the club. He went to Palace, did well, came back and has done well again. But I'm just looking at the options. Wesley Fofana, you can't really move him on because of his injury situation, length of his contract. Tosin Adarabio, I think it's a toss-up between Chalobah and Tosin. And for me, I just think that they're more likely to raise more money for Chalobah. I don't think between there's much difference between the ability and the contribution that Tosin or Chalobah would make. So I think if Chelsea are looking to raise funds, as they often do, Chalobah's the one that will go.
All right, for me, very simple. And again, we're looking at these guys as a group in terms of the center backs. You can't count on Wes Fofana. It's just, ideally, yeah, if he's fit, he can go straight into the team, and you have yourself a Fofana Colwill partnership. But we're not there yet. So for that reason, if I'm playing Champions League and as well as obviously the domestic cups in the league, I feel like I need 4 center backs or 4 center back options. And Fofana is not one of them because I don't know that I can rely on him to be fit. So I'm going Colwill. I'm keeping Chalobah. I'm keeping Tosin Adarabioyo. Comes down to Badiashile or Disasi for me. I'm keeping Badiashile for now. And then in January, we can have a conversation about sending him on loan. Disasi, we're good with sending him on loan, right? Or you're going to try to get a fee for him?
I think it's difficult. He didn't pull up a lot of trees at Aston Villa. He was kind of vying with Matty Cash at right back, and he was, Matty Cash isn't the best right back in the world. Now there's Disasi. He's got 4 years left in his contract at Chelsea, so I think it's going to be hard to move him on at 26. So you might have to move him on in terms of loan, but I don't think it's a bad option to have at the club. But he's a difficult one, Disasi. I would probably keep him at the club and then reassess in January.
So then you would ditch Badiashile, or you're going to carry 6 center backs?
I'd ditch Badiashile.
Come on, Mr. Sporting Director.
I would move on Badiashile.
Okay, I think it's easier
bad signing.
But we'll see about that. Over in the right back position, it's this bizarro situation where you have the club captain, Reece James, who's obviously often injured. You have Malo Gusto. Both of them locked into pretty long-term contracts. I mean, Malo Gusto is 2030. Both relatively young. But even then, we've had games last season where he played neither at right back and did Caicedo kind of stepping into midfield. I think we're stuck, and you have to keep everybody here, frankly, or at least you have to keep both Gusto and Reece James. But if I'm Malo Gusto, we saw a tiny bit of him playing at left back. I try to reinvent myself as a guy who can maybe play full back on either flanks. Because as long as Reece James is around, you're not going to be the nailed-on number 1 right back.
Yeah, but I like Malo Gusto, and I think his kind of thought process is probably along the lines of, I'm going to be right back more often than Reece James because Reece James can't stay fit, and he can't. We know that. Reece James is a very good player, but he's kind of fragile, isn't he? He's not a player that you can rely upon to play, 30 Premier League games a season, never mind 38. So if I'm Gusto, I'm thinking, I'm 3 years younger than this guy, who's got 3 years left in his contract. What situation will Chelsea be in terms of giving a new contract in a couple of years' time? I think you win that battle if you're Malo Gusto because James is never fit. He's not fit enough. And Chelsea got a busy summer, Club World Cup, not a lot of rest. And that is when Reece James is susceptible to getting injuries. So I just think Malo Gusto has to just bide his time and become the number 1 right back.
Left back, Marco Correa it's changed a lot of people's minds, including to some small degree myself. He's your left back. He's solid. Do we need a reserve left back? Possibly. There you get into a world of Renato Vega's back from his loan at Juventus. He wasn't terrible at Juventus. He didn't do well. He didn't do that well. That Juventus wanted to keep him at all costs. I don't think he wants to be a utility player. He said he wants to be a central defender. We've heard Maresca joke about it. He's like, I'd love to have long hair. It's not going to happen. You go on loan. We don't need you speaking out. Also, and I might also point out, Renato Vega's loan to Juve netted Chelsea about $4 million for 6 months, which goes a long way towards covering his amortization. So we're good with sending Mr. Vega away, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of the left back, they need a left back because obviously Ben Chilwell probably isn't going to come back and play. I think Ben Chilwell will be off on loan again. So as well as Cucurella has done in the last 12 months, I think Cucurella is always susceptible to a setback, a defensive lapse, a red card. So you definitely need somebody to challenge him, either to be his understudy or to actually play ahead of him because, we know there are good left backs out there. I mean, I think Liverpool are probably favourites to get Kirkes at Bournemouth, but I think a Kirkes at Chelsea wouldn't be out of the question. He's got the right age profile. He's good enough.
So I think in that, I love Kirkes, but I think the way Chelsea are structured, the attacking fullback is going to be on the right hand side, right, with James or Malo Gusto or Caicedo going back there. You do have Levi Colwell, who can, if necessary, slot over into the Cucurella position. Actually shares a lot of Cucurella's characteristics. Clearly not the hair, obviously, or the European Championship, but that's because he's English. So I don't know that it's imperative to have a reserve left back, to be honest. If they do, they can also, I agree with you, Chilwell's obviously not the guy, but Caleb Wiley, they actually spent $10 million on him to get him from MLS. He was on loan at Watford. He got injured. Obviously, we both have him going out on loan as well. But these are all people that they can recall. They can look to try out. And so I think it's, I think Chelsea are in this kind of paint by the numbers situation, covering some of these other guys who we haven't mentioned. Aaron Anselmino, who cost £15.6 million in January, hasn't played a single minute. He had an injury when he was there that he could get in the side. He's obviously one to loan out now that he's fit. He's not ready. He's only 20 years old. Josh Acheampong is a guy I really, really like. Issue is the man is a right back fundamentally. So he should go out on loan. I think he can go out on loan at pretty high level, but I think he's a guy who has a future. I'm not sure it's going to be a right back. And then Alfie Gilchrist, yet another right back. He has a year left. He was at Sheffield United on loan, played a big part in their season when they finished third in the championship, nearly got promoted. He's Chelsea through and through. Issue with him is he's a 6 foot tall central defender, so he has to play right back. That's not going to work at Chelsea. So see if you can get some money back for him now, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we're talking about the bits on the side here with these Chelsea defenders. I don't think any of these have got a real kind of future there. We've also got to mention Bashir Humphries as well, who had a loan at Burnley last season. He's gone and moved to Burnley for a decent fee, so more money coming in. So that's the Chelsea model, isn't it? People like Bashir Humphries, Alfie Gilchrist, they're the players that keep the wheels turning at a lower level in terms of bringing money in.
All right, moving on to midfield. Moises Caicedo, that's easy. He's their player of the year. He is a keep. Romeo Lavia is locked up until 2030, still just 21 years old. I think, Mark, you said if he's fit, he's a player.
Yeah, he is. I like Caicedo and Lavia. I think, we're looking at Chelsea midfield options, and it is quite light considering how much money they've spent and how many players they brought in. There's not a lot of options in midfield there, so there's not a lot of letting people go here. I think once Lavia is fit, I think he plays. But I think the next one on the list is Enzo Fernandez.
He plays as in he starts?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think he's...
You're going to drop Enzo? Because you're not dropping Caicedo or Cole Palmer, right?
As you know, I would look to move Enzo out, but I don't think you're going to be able to do it. I'm not a fan.
So you would drop Enzo?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that...
Shots fired, man.
Yeah, well, listen, they paid a lot of money for him. They paid over the odds for him, let's be honest. Everyone says he won the World Cup with Argentina. Yes, he did, but let's be honest, Lionel Messi won the World Cup for Argentina and the rest were a supporting cast. He's not in the same league as Alexis McAllister, who also won the World Cup with Argentina. I don't see any way that Chelsea can get him out. He's contracted until 2032, so that's under 7 years. I mean, the stuck with him is too strong a phrase because he's not a bad player, but I don't think he's a player that's going to make a difference. And I think next season, the Champions League, he might be found out a little bit. I think a lot of Chelsea players will find next season tougher in the Champions League because they closer to the Conference League. Let's be honest, the standard was pretty poor. I don't know. I think Enzo. I think they can find an upgrade in Enzo. I think he's a relic of their kind of scattergun approach to signing players 2.5 years ago. He's a good player, but he's not going to take Chelsea to the Premier League title or to Champions League. So I think there's always talk about Real Madrid. I don't see him go to Real Madrid, but I don't see anyone. I just don't see how you can get him out. But I tried to get him out if you could.
Yeah, but I think we agree it's probably not going to happen. Certainly not this summer. So if fundamentally our starters are Caicedo, Enzo, and obviously Cole Palmer a little bit further forward, Romeo Lavia we've talked about. We both said we need more bodies. One of those bodies is Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. Played a lot in the Conference League. He's Manesca's guy. Manesca trusts him. He hasn't contributed much in the Premier League. We'll have to see if he can contribute in the Premier League this season. But I think we're all in agreement that they need to bring in another central midfielder, and
Yeah.
they have one in house. Andre Santos, just 21 years old. He's been on loan at Strasbourg for 18 months. Had a monster season in central midfield. Scored 10 goals, but is really probably more of a natural defensive midfielder. Ton of personality. I'm good with him backing up Caicedo and Lavia. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, Dewsbury Hall, I think we have to ask what his motivation is really. Is his motivation to be around a big club, have the chance of winning trophies, but not playing very often? Or does he want to go and play very often elsewhere? I mean, I'm just plucking a name out of thin air, but let's say Leeds wanted to sign him. He played virtually every game for Leeds, but does he want to drop to a lower Premier League club and kind of replicate what he had at Leicester? But he doesn't play enough. He's the Conference League guy, but they're not in the Conference League next season. So when does he play? He's not going to play in the Champions League. So they paid a lot of money for him as well. I agree with you. I'd bring Andre Santos back and look to move on Kieran Dewsbury Hall. But again, it's difficult considering he's got 4 years left in his contract and he only signed for a big fee last summer.
Yeah, look, Dewsbury Hall's not going anywhere, I think. Now they have Matisse Amugo, who's 19 years old. He only played 24 minutes. He came from Saint-Etienne. He's also kind of a defensive central midfielder type. Because I have Andre Santos back, I don't need another guy who came over from France. They like him a lot. He can go on loan. Hey, look, he can replace Andre Santos at Strasbourg, perhaps. Sorry, this is a very long list of players. It is Chelsea. Leslie Ugochukwu, speaking of French midfielders, he was on loan at Southampton last year, played a little bit.
He played more than a bit.
You say, what?
He played more than a bit. He played enough to be kind of part of the team that went down.
In their terrible season?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you play more than half of a team's terrible season, being relegated from the Premier League with the second worst record ever, I don't think you can go from that to be dropped back in the squad at Chelsea. So I think they have to loan him out again next season, see if he can step up at that level or whether he was part of a Southampton team that just wasn't good enough for the Premier League. But I loan him out again and see where you go.
Carney Chukwuemeka, man, you remember the hype when he signed him for £20 million from Aston Villa? He went on loan to Borussia Dortmund. I mean, he was injured earlier in the year. He went on loan to Borussia Dortmund. He started one game in the league, plus I think one game in the Champions League. There's an option to buy. It's set quite high, I think, at 35 million euros for what we've seen. There's no pathway for him at Chelsea. If you get money for him, you let him go. I think anything more than 10 million and you're okay in terms of with the amortization.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we come out, he may have been named to the Borussia Dortmund squad for the Club World Cup. They want to take him to the Club World Cup, so that might be a shot window for him to do well, appeal to somebody. But I don't think Dortmund want to do the deal at that asking price. So he's really in the shot window at the Club World Cup to prove that he can do it either somewhere in the Premier League or he's been at Villa. He could get back to that level, or another club in Europe, but not at Chelsea.
All right, looking at the forwards, Jadon Sancho.
Have we missed a midfielder on our list? Cole Palmer.
Or is there much to talk about? Cole Palmer, you keep. He's got a deal 2033. Right, you got something to say about Cole Palmer?
I think for the
sell him to Barcelona,
we have to address Chelsea's best player. You're right. He's got 8 years left in his contract. Qualifying for the Champions League has saved him and Chelsea a big problem because he's too good to not play in the Champions League. But now they're in it. He should be happy there. But, at some point he might want to get out of Chelsea. And how does he do it at 8 years contract? He's kind of stuck there. But, if Chelsea do well. What was interesting after the Conference League final, when he made it clear that he was not happy with, as he said, the ball keep going sideways and backwards, he decided to take basically executive action and play the ball forwards and play to his strengths. Basically go against the Maresca game plan, which was great because it won Chelsea the Conference League. But if he's now thinking, I don't like this Maresca football, because there are times I saw Chelsea last season and it was pass sideways, don't look for an opening. It's really boring. If you're Cole Palmer, you want to play it in a certain way. And maybe that's why it didn't work at City, because he was too much of a maverick for Pep. But if Cole Palmer gets frustrated at Chelsea because the coach is playing a certain way, then we're going to get to a point, a bit of tension, a bit of friction at some point whereby they might have different paths. So just keep an eye on that. Nothing's going to happen this summer, but keep an eye on Cole Palmer because he could be outgrowing this Chelsea team quite quickly.
Moving on to the forwards, Jadon Sancho. He was on loan. Chelsea tried to convince him to stay because I think he did contribute something. But to do that, of course, they would have had to make his deal permanent, pay 25 million, and reach a multi-year agreement with Jadon Sancho. They were not able to do that, so they paid a £5 million, effectively £5 million loan fee, and sent him back to United. He's United's problem. My take, I think they could have really used Sancho, but if he's not willing to be there, if he's not willing to cut a deal to be there on a reasonable wage, then hey, go back to Old Trafford and and go and become Amorim's problem.
Well, it's more Phil Jadon Sancho, isn't it? Whoever's advising Jadon Sancho is not doing a very good job because at the end of next season, when his contract expires at Man United, he won't be able to command the wages at Man United. He might find that whoever he joined on a free transfer will not pay him anywhere close to what he's on at Man United. So the long-term option may have been to stay at Chelsea on a decent wage and, take his chances.
Also, fundamentally, you're at Chelsea, a team that plays with wingers.
Yeah.
And you're moving to Manchester United, a team that plays without wingers. I mean,
yeah, it's just a bad decision. Bad decision all around.
All right. Mykhailo Mudryk is a keep unless the PD people take him away. Nothing you can do here. You're stuck in more ways than one, which is actually good because that way we won't criticize his lack of performance since coming over. Tyreek George, 2027, plus an option for a year. I thought he did really well when we saw him late in the season when he got a chance. I think it can be part of the winger rotation. I see a 4-man winger rotation perhaps, and he can be part of that.
I don't know. I don't think he's ready. They obviously brought in Liam Delap. I don't know. I think Tyreek George needs to go.
They didn't play Liam Delap to play on the wing.
No, they played Tyreek George in the middle against Man United, and he wasn't up to it. So I think let him out and load. Chelsea got a lot of forwards and wingers.
I don't know. I actually think they're short in the winger department, but hey, different strokes are different strokes. But two wingers they do have are Nani Madueke. He's a straight keep. Yeah, it deals with 2030. No, nothing to do there. The other one, Pedro Neto, 2031. He's 25 years old. I'm not bowled over by him, but he gives you effort all the time, and he can play on either wing, right? So
and he made a big contribution in the win at Fulham, which turned Chelsea's season around at the latter stage of the season. So he played his part. We know he's a good player from what he's done at Wolves. So I'm more than happy with Pedro Neto's stay.
Nicholas Jackson, 23 years old, 2033, he's center forward. He's proven doubters wrong. He's another one. I think as long as he doesn't get himself suspended for stupid things and isn't overused, and he shouldn't be with Delap coming in. I think you have yourself a nice little forward who can also play on the wing because he did that earlier in his career, and I think he has a skill set to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. He's silenced his critics, and I've been one of them. I think he's quite limited.
Alan Shearer were his biggest critics.
Well, yeah. But he's effective, isn't he? Despite the fact that he's not got the best touch and he's not got the best awareness, he scores goals and he's got his pace. So also that moment of madness at Newcastle when he was sent off, which could have caused a problem for Chelsea in the Champions League. But yeah, he's effective. He does his job. So you stick with him.
Christopher Nkunku, we all loved him when he signed, and then he's been injured, and then he's had issues, and then he was asked to impersonate a center forward. Clearly hasn't worked out, Mark. You're on the hook for another 4 years through 2029.
Yeah, again, that was one of their silly season signings at the beginning, wasn't it? When they went early and went big, and he's just not really made an impact. They tried to load him in January.
I actually think this signing, it might have even, because if you remember, they signed him for him to come later. I think this actually predates Bowley and Clearlake. So not something we can blame Uncle Todd for.
No, that's a fair point. He was at Leipzig until the summer, wasn't he? But still, he's been a big disappointment. He had a great reputation, scored a lot of goals at Leipzig, but just hasn't cut it at all in the Premier League for whatever reason. Injury's part of it, but not all of it. So try and move him on. I think they'll have to loan him out, won't they?
Yeah, because I don't think you're getting any kind of fee for him. It would cost at least £35 million to cover his residual amortization. That ain't going to happen. Mark Yu, 2029, obviously 19 years old. You like him more than I do, but weirdly, I want to keep him around because I think you need 3 strikers if you're going to compete in both, and especially if you can use Jackson on the wing sometimes. Whereas you want to loan him out.
Yeah, so I saw him score his hat-trick against Shamrock Rovers, And obviously, Shamrock Rovers, it's not the highest quality, but he looked to play. He looked to play. You can watch a player no matter what the opposition is. You can think he's got something. He's got movement. He's got presence. He knows where the goal is. But he's not going to play next season. He's not going to play ahead of Jackson and ahead of Delap. Intriguingly, having sold Delap to Chelsea, Ipswich are now looking at taking Mark Goob to Ipswich on loan. I think that'd be a perfect move. A year in the Championship with Ipswich, a good team, and then bring him back to Chelsea. But I think there's promise there. There's definitely a player in Mark Goob. It's not the easiest surname to pronounce, so I apologise if I'm not saying it properly.
Guillou. It's like Giroud, but it's Guillou. All right. The rest is kind of part of the loan army. David Dr. Fofana. He's the Norwegian of Ivorian descent, or Ivorian guy of Norwegian descent. I forget which. No, he's Ivorian, but he played in Norway. It's just that he's been on loan at Burnley. It hasn't worked out with them. They sent him to Göztepe in Turkey. Poor guy got injured. He came back. Easy. He goes out on loan again because he's got no purpose in the Chelsea first team. João Felix, maybe the most technically gifted player at the club. He was on loan at Milan.
Why did they give him they gave him a 7-year contract? That was one of the most stupid things. I mean, a 7-year contract for João Felix was ridiculous. And, it's not even taken 6 months for that the reality to come through, that it was a silly idea. And they stuck with him. Just stuck with him. How on earth are you getting rid of João Felix?
Well, you wanted to get something back for Conor Gallagher, right? Right. And you wanted to be able to write in your books that you got 50 million for Conor Gallagher. And so you got João Felix instead, and you put a big 50 there, and then you amortize João Felix. It's accounting. That's what it is. There was, for a small minute, I thought maybe Manesca can get to him and work his magic on his brain. Nope, he couldn't do it. Then obviously Milan thought, Sergio Conceição, like Sergio's oldest son was João Felix's roommate. Maybe they can work together, blah, 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 and he can get to him. Nope. I think this is, you bring up Uncle George and say, hey, find a home for your guy. We don't.
What I'm really surprised at, I've just turned the clock back 12 months. Remember when Aston Villa were really keen to sign João Felix? Obviously Monchi and Unai Emery were really keen to sign João Felix. We kept getting this noise out of Villa saying, Unai's got this great track record of improving players that have fallen off the tracks a little bit and need to revive their careers. And, obviously Chelsea didn't sign him, but they signed Marcus Rashford later in the year, as somebody described recently to me as the English João Felix. So, it's funny how things go around, isn't it? That, João Felix, Marcus Rashford, two players that are both available this summer, who might find it very difficult to find a move.
Yeah, maybe they could maybe United and Chelsea could do a swap deal. Armando Broja, 22 years old. He was on loan at Everton. He's had fitness issues again. I really like this guy. Everton have an option to buy, but we don't think they're going to exercise it. He's going to come back and he's going to go out on loan again, right? And hope that he restores his career.
Yeah, you think so. But in terms of Everton, obviously, they've let Dominic Calvert-Lewin has come to the end of his contract. So Everton do need a forward. So that Everton might decide that, having worked with him, they might have seen something that makes them think, we'll take him back on loan next season. Because obviously, when he's fit, Broja, he's got something about him. He's got tenacity. He can score goals, and Everton didn't get enough out of him last year. So the Calvert-Lewin situation might just open it up for Broja at Everton, but I think it's unlikely.
Well, they have Beto, don't they?
Yeah, they can't have just one striker. They were in the market. They were in the market for Liam Delap. David Moyes made it clear, which I think was always a non-starter. So they do want a centre forward, and Broja is a guy that they know. So maybe.
David Washington, he didn't work out when he was here. They loaned him to Santos. That loan, I think, lasts through all of 2025, so he can just stay there and hang out with his hero Neymar. We should mention now some players who. Before I get to that, we need to mention Giovanni Kenda. He's not going to be here, but he is part of the conversation for the future. You might have seen him playing for Sporting. He's basically a winger who's playing at wing back. He's very, very young, just 17 years old. Effectively, Chelsea have signed him and loaned him back to Sporting for another season. I think this comes into the equation looking at kind of the core of wingers for next season and why I wouldn't go and splash a ton of money on wingers this year, because this dude's coming in. And then speaking of wingers, they also have William Esteval, 18 years old, 2032, is already a Brazilian international. They signed him a while ago, but obviously you have to be 18 unless you have a European passport to go and transfer. They're going to take a look at him at the Club World Cup, assess whether he can contribute straight away, and that's pretty much the situation. Kendry Pais is also in, also 18, also 2032. Like, I've never seen these people in the flesh. I've only seen them on a flat screen. In my view, Esteval's maybe more ready to integrate straight away at Chelsea. But is your obvious idea to loan both of them?
I think so. I mean, let's look at what's happened to Endrick at Real Madrid this season. He's not really had an impact. I think you could probably say that they are similar situations, very young kids that have come from South America. It takes a lot of adapting to, and I think obviously Esteval has a lot of promise if he's already in the Brazil squad, but I think you have to maybe, use Strasbourg, as we know that's part of the Chelsea family. That might be a good way to loan them out, but I think it's too early for these two to come into the Premier League right now. Definitely look to loan them out next season.
And another guy who they also signed from Sporting, who's kind of, for some reason, come up here at the end of my list, but Dario Sugo is 20 years old. They spent a lot of money on him. They spent 23 million euros, which I think is actually quite a lot of money for a guy who he was on loan at Las Palmas, who of course were relegated from La Liga. He's a defensive midfielder. I'm all for having spare defensive midfielders lying around. I personally think if it comes down between him or Andre Santos, I'm keeping Santos. But you're probably going to want to keep both of them.
Yeah, why not? These young players, some of them are ready to go, and I think he might be ready to go. He's played in Portugal, so when they let Enzo Fernandez go, they're going to need more midfielders.
Enzo Fernandez not going this summer.
Yes.
All right. Our overall,
we have one more player to mention in the loan bucket. Raheem Sterling. Now, obviously,
yes, I've missed out entirely on him.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I mean, look, he's one of the worst signings probably in recent history. Chelsea went big on here. He was the first signing of the new ownership. I think they were very naive in terms of what they paid for him, what they gave him wages. A guy that was pretty much on the way down before he left Man City anyway. So City got their money back on him. Look, Raheem Sterling's been around now he broke through before the 2013-14 season at Liverpool, so he's been around a long time. He's only 29, but he's got a lot of football in his legs, and I think he's a player that can no longer operate at the top level. Arsenal took a chance, and he barely played for Arsenal this season. Didn't really contribute at all, but he's got 2 years left in his contract. So, and it's a big contract. I just don't know where he goes. I mean, I don't think he finds a top 6, top 8 club in England. The noise is from his camp that he doesn't fancy Saudi Arabia. Doesn't fancy, that kind of move. So I don't know, Gav, where does he go? Where does Raheem Sterling go where he can play out the 2 years of his contract?
He's owed 30 million over the next 2 seasons. I think the only way out is if he accepts a similar situation. I think everybody wants to play, right? He doesn't just want to sit there and count his money. I mean, that's why he accepted Arsenal, knowing that at Arsenal, at least, from day one, he was going to be behind Saka and Martinelli, probably behind Trossard as well, right? And it didn't work out with him. Then you get your confidence back, and maybe you go out and you look at the next tier down. Can I go to, obviously not Spurs, but whatever the next tier down from that is? And you say, can I contribute? Can I contribute at West Ham, for example? I wonder if you'd love to go back to QPR, but obviously they're a little too far down. That might be something that becomes relevant in a couple of years if they get promoted. But I think that's the only way forward for him. Chelsea would have to cover part of his wages, and he'll go down as an expensive mistake. But I don't see any scenario where he would stay at Chelsea and take away minutes from the young wingers that they do have.
No. I mean, wherever he goes, I think he would be an expensive mistake. I don't think West Ham could afford him, but I don't think he's a player anymore. I just don't think
they can't afford him. I mean, if they take him on loan and Chelsea covers 2/3 of his wages, then West Ham can't afford him.
But they can't afford him from a football sense either, because I don't think he's a player that would contribute anymore. I don't think if you put him in the West Ham team, I don't think he would actually do anything significant that would make West Ham better. I just think Raheem Sterling
You
has
make
been a
it
great
seem as
player.
if he's incapable of helping anybody. I mean,
Well, I think he is.
completely useless.
In the Premier League, I think he is. In the Premier League, I think that Raheem Sterling's been a great player, fantastic career at Liverpool and Man City, but he's had a lot of football. He's had 12, 13 years at the top level, and I think he's beginning to show. So
Right.
maybe
I'm
he has
not prepared to write off completely somebody who's that talented personally.